Welcome to Gray Maybe, a podcast and social experiment based on this season's topic, abuse. My name is Jillian Schmitz. I'm a professional dancer, actor, teacher, author, artist, mother, and cat lover. Through my own personal journey of recovery, I've found that things aren't just black or white, or a simple yes or no. For me, in my recovery, there has been mostly gray area and a lot of maybes. In most of my stories, you can find the gray maybe. I will be sharing my own process through personal stories and interviews with others in an effort to destigmatize, bring awareness, and find recovery from many types of abuse. If you'd like to share your story, please email graymaybestories@gmail.com. graymaybestories@gmail.com. Before we get started, if you haven't already, please subscribe on whichever platform you're using to catch future episodes of Gray Maybe. A note before we begin. My stories and the stories of others on this podcast are told through the lens of our own experience. The revelation of our process is ours to tell. If you disagree with the views or stories on this podcast, know that we are not speaking on anything other than our own experiences and viewpoints. Take what you like and leave the rest. Nothing expressed or mentioned in this podcast is an endorsement or is meant to be taken as advice. It is strictly the sharing of our own experiences and our own recovery. Any feelings this podcast activates in the listener is for the listener to process and recover from. Any criticism you have based on these experiences and choices are yours, and they are not anyone else's burden to carry. Trigger warning: psychological abuse, emotional abuse, non-consent. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Gray Maybe. If you're new here, welcome. And thank you so much for coming and deciding to join us today. If you're an old faithful member, thank you for coming back again and again. It really means all the world to me. I love doing this podcast. I love talking about it with people who are listeners, and I love when new people stop by. Today, I have a very special guest. I say that about every guest, but every guest is very special. And this one is very, very special. I feel let me see, a little bit like royalty around her because of where she comes and reigns from in what world. But my guest today is someone that I've gotten the luxury to perform with a couple of times. She is a legend in her field. She's a burlesque queen, a fellow burlesque queen. Many of you who are in the burlesque world, and maybe not even in the world, know exactly who she is. And she's a lovely, lovely, very inspiring, very, what I would say, a very feminist performer, very lively, beautiful, lovely acts and costumes and all those things. And I have had so many amazing conversations with her in the dressing room. Although we haven't worked a ton together, the conversations I had with her were always really great, deep, and meaningful. There's one thing that I always think about in my head that I remember her saying. She says, "I'm not an object, I'm a subject." We'll ask her if she still feels that way. I hope she does, because I think it's fantastic. And it rings in my head all the time when it comes to the intersection of women and what we do for art as burlesque work and the Madonna horse syndrome, all that type of stuff. But I'll stop talking. I want to introduce Michelle Lamore to the Gray Maybe podcast. Welcome.
Hi, Jillian. It's so good to see you. And I've always loved performing with you and working with you backstage because you're just real. Like, you're a no bullshit kind of person. And I'm from Chicago, so that's my language.
And you're from Chicago. I'm from Minnesota. And I can tell everyone, I just want to reiterate, as someone who came from Minnesota, Chicago is colder, okay? And that should mean something coming from me, just so you all know. That water off the lake is real. That
Brutal.
place is freezing. So give you props for that, for being the coldest place ever coming from a Minnesota native. So what is there anything else? I know I kind of like blanket talked about you. If there's anything else you want to add about who you are to people who might be meeting you for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing burlesque for 21 years. Like I said, I started in Chicago and then I moved to LA in 2018 and started working with you. And Then I had to move to Vegas in the pandemic to survive. It was like, where can I go to spend less money and have more space? And Vegas was the answer. Um, so yeah, so now I'm kind of splitting my time between LA and Vegas, and I've also completed my training as an intimacy coordinator for TV and film, which really I think connects a lot of the dots for me in my personal life as far as consent and boundaries and learning how to say no and learning how to use my voice. And so I think that training has been really instrumental and eye-opening for me on my own personal journey. But yeah, that's what I'm up to now.
I love that you're doing this. I love that I know this about you. We're going to make sure, obviously, we always drop everybody's socials and stuff like that. But if you're listening to this podcast, you're working on a production that needs an intimacy coordinator, please consider Michelle. I will have ways for you to reach out to her. Also, for people who may not be in the biz or even have been in the biz, but this is a newer position in the business, an intimacy coordinator, and you're going to talk more about it. I'm going to give my blanket statement and then you can give some details, please, is someone who is on set that helps basically be the communication between the talent that is having an intimate scene, which could be anything from like kissing, touching, lovemaking to also like undoing clothing or being slightly naked or something like that. And it is their kind of advocate, their communication person between the talent and the production so that someone doesn't kind of get railroaded into doing something they don't want to do or just make sure that they have someone there to kind of like really protect them. Is that the kind of the gist?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Yeah, I act as a liaison between the talent and the director and the production, just making sure that everybody is clear about what the scene is, making sure that I have the director's vision, communicating that to the actors, and then getting their consent, yay, nay, on whatever is happening in the scene. And then, also working with wardrobe and makeup if there are, nude scenes or we need different kind of garments to work with. So I work with that. I also work with writers as well. And then I can also do choreography, of course, for those
Mm-hmm.
scenes. And choreography is so important in those scenes because it really helps to like set your expectations. I think a lot of people, I've heard, I see a lot in the press, and maybe you have too, but people don't want to be stifled. They want to be spontaneous. Who is saying this? The
Men.
men. The men. They want to be spontaneous. And it's like, okay, but you have a fight scene. Like you can't be spontaneous
There
in a
is
fight scene.
no spontaneity in a fight scene. Just
No.
for anybody who might not be in the industry, there's absolutely no spontaneity in a fight scene because it is what? Dangerous.
Yeah.
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 The same way
So
it is dangerous.
exactly. I
And
mean, like anything in TV or film is produced within an inch of its life. But
yes,
like we're gonna leave these really vulnerable, hyper-exposed scenes and just be like, oh, just make it
just
hotter.
feel it.
Like,
Yeah, just feel
no,
it.
no,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
No. So, like we can spend hours lighting a matchbook, but like,
Yeah.
okay, let's talk about this meaty scene here.
That's a really, really good point. Because again, people who might not be in the industry, I just want to highlight what she said is absolutely 100% true. Every single thing on set is planned, practiced, rehearsed, and shot and reshot until it's perfect. Every department has to be perfect. So nobody is just rogue doing it. The closest thing you will ever get to like everybody just do their own thing is kind of like a martini shot, like in the dance world where people are dancing and nothing has changed, but the cameraman might just do wild shots, right? As just extra blanket footage. But even so, you know to look out for him. He knows where his path is or isn't, or we're just solely supposed to look out for him. It's still planned, talked about, executed, and there's communication about it. So what she's saying is completely true. And it's very interesting. And I didn't actually put that all together till you just said it that, yeah, when it comes to like sexy dancing, sexy moving, because that's what I have the most background is dance on set on TV and film. I also have acting background on TV and film, but I have a much more dance. And when it comes to that type of stuff, there does start to be a little bit more like leniency that is not afforded in these other areas and never would be.
Yeah. Yeah. And it shows you how pervasive shame is
Hmm.
in just our everyday life, of course, but when it comes to the production, like we don't want to talk about it, we don't want to say the wrong thing, we just want to be hands off, and let people go. And that the thing is, like, you're blending now your personal life into your character, and that's where things get really messy and dangerous for everyone involved.
Absolutely. I'm going to say this last thing and then I'm going to move on from this topic because I want to hear your story and your personal stuff. I want to hear your personal stuff. That sounds like very like a threat.
I think we all need intimacy coordinators, like just in our everyday life.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So the first time I ever had an intimacy coordinator was on Better Things. The director is Pamela Adlin. She is also the writer and producer of that show.
Yeah,
That was the
she's
first
great.
time ever. She is great.
Yeah.
And that was in 2019, pre-pandemic. I had never had an intimacy coordinator before. The one that was assigned to me was great. She was really good about protecting me and making sure I had a place to change that was on set but comfortable, and that people really respected me, and that my clothing was this, that, and the other because I was doing a burlesque scene. And just a little side note about Pamela Adlin. I did not have lines in the scene, but I was a principal character and I had a character name. So it's like crediting, that's a whole thing. But she called me before the scene, really kind of like talked to me, which never happens. Like directors don't normally talk to you until you're on the set that day. And when I showed up to that set, I have never seen a more diverse set of people. There were women in jobs that are mostly only men. There was every color and type of person. It just was like a really great experience. Shout out to her. And
Yeah.
my
And it was a
first,
great show. I loved
it's
the
a
show.
great show.
Yeah.
Yes. So I love that you're doing that. Please, people, if you are looking for an intimacy coordinator, let's get in touch with Michelle about that because she's got a lot of background that's going to support that. So she's here today. And this is the craziest thing. So Michelle is someone that I see as so strong, so feminist, so in her power. And so I'm excited to have her today because not that anything she's going to say today makes me think anything other than what I already think about her. But I think some people think that when we're talking about the heavy topic of abuse, and the ambiguity of abuse, right? That it only affects people who are a certain type of person. And I want to shatter that right now because I know how people think about who I am as an outside entity, like outside looking in. I know what that is for me and I know what that is for you. And I think they're pretty much the same people.
Mhm.
That same idea. And so if you would, and start wherever you'd like, if you want to start at the beginning, if you want to tell a certain circumstance, I want to start shattering that idea right now that abuse happens to only a certain type of person.
Oh, yes. I have so much to talk about. Maybe this is in two parts,
Two-parter.
but first I want to say, leading up to this podcast, before you had asked me, I was watching the show Agatha all along. Have you seen it?
No, but let me make a note.
So it's all witches. It's on Disney Plus.
Of course you were.
Yeah, and I was watching it and just loving it. And I had this memory, this flashback where a few years ago I had met with this I don't even know if they would be a spiritual advisor. It was someone that would like speak to your spirit guides. And she told me that I had a witch's wound.
Mm.
And this was years ago. And I never really like thought about that or looked into that or what was that. And so I was watching the show and that went through my head and I looked it up, like, what is a witch's wound? And it said, fear of speaking out, fear of persecution. And I was like, oh, yes. So I was kind of chewing on this for about 2 days. And then you reached out to me and asked if I would speak about this. And I said, absolutely.
That's
But
so crazy. See,
yeah.
I don't see you as someone who has trouble with their voice at all. In fact, I've always felt my opinion, like my what's the word I'm looking for? My experience of you has always been like very concise in how you say everything, very exactly how you want to say it, not mincing words at all, very clear, very like an unshakable voice, right? Okay, so
Mm.
go on. I don't want to interrupt anymore.
No, no, for sure. So there's like the perception and the reality, right? And all these things are going on behind the scenes. And, I've never spoken about this publicly. Like I've alluded to some things on social media, but I've never really had a platform to talk about this. So thank you for reaching out. And it's such a serendipitous time. It's great. Um, yes, the idea that, I was talking about this with a friend of mine, the strong woman type, the confident woman type. No way that they deal with this kind of stuff. No way would they get themselves in this situation or put up with whatever. But there are so many of those types of women that I know personally that have been in these really, can I swear?
Yes.
Okay. And these are really like fucked up, narcissistic kind of relationships. And there's something that I think about, that I had this kind of flash that went through, and I just thought, you know what? If you don't know your worth, someone else will, and they will take it from you. And I was in that position. Like, I didn't fully grasp my worth. My worth was wrapped up in my potential and not who I really was and what I was trying to do. Um, I don't, this is something that I struggled with. I was in a relationship for 21 years, and there was a very dark, dark part of that relationship that no one knew about. I did not speak a word about it to anyone. No friends, no family, nothing. And I feel like the thing that was happening, it was going on for 16 or 17 years of that 21-year relationship. Um, and I was in a really perfect spot to kind of have this experience. I grew up in an evangelical Christian home. So the groundwork for spiritual abuse was well laid. I had a very good foundation. Um, I I broke out of that. I broke out of the evangelical life, and I kind of stepped into a new kind of spiritual abuse, which was wrapped up in my sexuality, um, which really made for some really intense mind fuckery. Um, so there was this religion that was created around me personally. I was supposed to be the figurehead of this religion, and I never felt comfortable. I
Mhm.
never wanted to be this. I was supposed to be the voice and the face of this created belief system.
Mm.
Um, and a lot of it was like based in generosity, like how generous I was with my body or with my art meant that I was becoming more vulnerable. And I never ascended to the status of goddess, right? Like right now, the word goddess makes me cringe. Like
Mm.
when people say that to me, I'm like, ugh, like because I have such this
Right.
history with it, and I'm angry about that. I'm angry that something that we should be reclaiming that is beautiful is now feels like tainted and gross to me.
Mhm.
And that's, the work that I need to do to reclaim reclaim that. But yeah, I go ahead.
And when you say like the more generous I would be, like, do you feel comfortable giving an example?
Yeah, yeah. Like there were a lot of concessions that I made in my head to kind of do all the mental gymnastics that I had to do to take on the requests that were coming at me. And I did this so many times where I would be like, well, I'm not okay with this full thing, but what if I just give like that little bit? And so like I would give like little bits and I would push myself further in order to kind of get some breathing room and to
Mm-hmm.
like get them off my back for like
Mm-hmm.
a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But there's videos that I made, Patreon, OnlyFans, things like that, that are more explicit than I would want them to be.
I see.
Um, and so when I look back on that, I'm like, "Ugh, I didn't really want that. And at the time, I was kind of like testing myself, like,
Right.
okay, how vulnerable can I be? Like, does this feel okay? But like honestly, the big lesson here for me, for everybody, is that you cannot be in consent. You cannot give consent if you're not in choice.
Mm.
And I did not feel that I was in choice. I felt a tremendous amount of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you experienced this or you've gotten over it, but like the people pleasing kind of thing.
Girl, can I just tell you, like, I don't even want to interrupt you because what you're saying, all of it is just so good. It's like gold for everyone listening. Like, I'm just like, when you see me look off and writing, I'm literally writing either things I want to highlight because I think they're so great, or I'm like a follow-up questions because it's all so good. Like, the people pleasing. Well, first of all, I'm going to try to really not get you off course because this is so good. First of all, the fact that you say that you were kind of like primed for this, I 100% relate. I grew up Catholic, right? Roman Catholic, that as a religious base, which is to me no more better crazy or anything than evangelical or Mormon. And the reason I'm highlighting those religions is one, because you just said yours, and a former guest, Scott Hislop, grew up in the Mormon faith and has his abuse story. So it's like uh, there seems to be a common denominator with certain religions that are all kind of around in each other in a similar fashion that kind of prime people for not having autonomy, not speaking up, not feeling empowered, uh, you know, just following directions, doing what an adult tells you, like this kind of authoritarian type of situation to begin with. So I just want to say that right there is already starting to look like it's almost like a precursor marker for someone to experience abuse later on or as a child or whatever. Um, but also, when it comes to people pleasing, 100%, I still struggle with people pleasing so much. And now, kind of what I call it is like boundaries. Like, oh, I'm not doing a good job with my boundaries right now, or I need to revisit boundaries, or I need to create better boundaries or new boundaries. Because, yes, the people pleasing is exhausting. And then I get angry, which is like a sign that I'm not standing up for myself or my boundaries have been crossed. And it's usually because I'm people pleasing. That's why I don't have enough. I'm bending over backwards because I think someone wants something. And this is the funny thing is, they may not. They're just doing whatever they want to do, and I'm not speaking up, or I'm like assuming that. Yeah. So I continue on with people pleasing. It's so funny because I don't think people think you and I are people pleasers. The way we act and conduct ourselves, we seem like probably the opposite of that. But it's so entrenched in us. Like it's really hard to change. Yeah,
Oh,
go
for
ahead.
sure. So I like that's something that I actively work on. I really pay attention to and I'm mindful about. And I'm also really mindful about over proving.
Mm,
I find that we tend, especially as women, to overprove. Like women, anyone in a marginalized community tends to feel the need to overprove and overdo, which leads to burnout. Like it's no surprise that like women have I think they have like 70% more autoimmune disease than
yes.
men. It's
Yes.
because we're fucking exhausted. But the overproving, and I will kind of liken that to burlesque. I teach a class called Slow Burn, and it's something that I really enjoy doing.
We will
Um,
link that in the show notes so that people can find that.
but the slow burn is all about stillness, right? It's all about engagement. It's all about intention, right? And a lot of times when burlesque dancers will go out, it's about all the tricks and the high kicks and the knee slams and whatever. But to come out there and just look and breathe
Mm-hmm.
takes so much effort and just being grounded in yourself
Mm-hmm.
and confident that that's enough. And
Yes.
I think that's just across the board throughout life. You know, I noticed that even as a teacher, I would be like trying to over prove how much I knew. You know, this is like back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do that anymore. I like to say that now I hold the space instead of grip it.
Mm.
And I was gripping the shit out of stuff in the past. But in regards to like the people pleasing and my experience, like my relationship became uh an exercise in endurance. It was endurance. And it wasn't like it was dark. It was really dark. When I look back at that version of myself, I see a version of me who is like on the floor in crying hysterically, feeling so small,
Mm-hmm.
so small, so not good enough, not woman enough, not empowered enough,
Mm.
not generous enough, not vulnerable enough. And what was wrong with me that I couldn't be the figurehead of this religion? Why couldn't
Mm-hmm.
I, Michelle Lamore,
Mm-hmm.
the burlesque performer who
Mm-hmm.
stands in front of strangers naked most of the time? Why can't I do this? What is wrong with me? You know, and it just was like I just beat myself up over and over and over again. And it was just this cycle. And it brought on so much anxiety. Like
Mm-hmm.
I would be, you met me at a pretty good time. I was kind of coming into my own more than I ever have. Like my move to LA was a really big shift for me energetically, but I was still struggling with stuff. I would get a lot of social anxiety and just be like, "Oh my God, like I'm so small. Who cares? Like no one wants,
Mm-hmm.
like I just felt like I could never be this version of myself that someone thought that I should be.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to be that. I didn't want people to be worshiping my body. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to share my body with people. Um, and I felt bad about that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, well, I do this for a living, so like I felt like a fraud a lot
Mm.
of the times.
And like, because I've seen you do burlesque recently, do you feel different now about it? Right. Okay. So can you talk about that?
Yeah. So I was just talking about this the other day is like, I feel like I'm really coming at it through a female gaze. I think when I started and when I started teaching, it was definitely through the male gaze. It was really about like, what is going to please them? What is going to turn them on? And yes, what we're doing is entertainment. Sure, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there is an element of that to be considered. There's an element of an audience to be considered. But really, right now, what I'm trying to bring to the stage is one, just reclaiming my body in this space and in
Mm-hmm.
this art form, and just for myself personally. And also, I want to kind of share my the joy that I have in my body. It's more about me, it's less about them. I
Mm-hmm.
do not care if people leave turned on by me.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm more just like, let's just have this conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's just have this moment. Like, I'm fully in my body. I am experiencing this. I am sharing this with you. I
Mm-hmm.
am being generous in this
Mm-hmm.
moment. Um, and it just feels so much different. Like, I'm just having way more fun on
Mm-hmm.
stage.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I still have to say to myself, my body is mine. My
Mm,
body is mine. Like I literally every day over the past few weeks, I had to say, my body is mine because I get flashbacks and I get sent back into
right,
that space and
right.
I get anxious and I cry. I mean,
Hmm.
full disclosure, I just got back from Tokyo.
Right, you're jet lagged, I'm sure as hell. I didn't even ask you. We just jumped on and started going at it.
Yeah, but like I literally had to sit in the wings in the
Mm,
dark and sob. Like I was on
mm,
the floor sobbing because I just my performance life and um my relationship were very intertwined because we
hmm,
had worked together. And so um sometimes it's really hard for me to
hmm,
perform because it is so mixed up and like there's a lot of stuff going through my head and through my body.
hmm.
And sometimes it has to come out my face.
Yeah, a lot of triggers, I can only
Yeah,
imagine, you know? It's
yeah.
like, for those of you who maybe haven't had a similar experience, I can imagine it's probably like when you're getting, like, this is a very small example. I'm going to amp it up in a second. But if you're going through a breakup, when you go through that breakup, like all the places you used to go and all the experiences you used to had, and it makes you sad all over again. Well, it's like that, but trauma and worse. So it's like really scary. So your body goes into fight and flight. You think it's happening. Your body thinks it's happening again. So you have reactions like it's happening again, and that happens with everything. Oh, it's like the same trigger mechanism as you would have if it's something like that, but it's so much more intense. I would imagine for what you're going through.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, it's weird. Like this whole situation has been very hard to explain and describe. I feel like it was a cult, like but it was like a cult of one,
Right,
like um other people were, they kind of came into the fold a little bit, have like a little bit of understanding of things, but not to the degree that I was experiencing. And, it's been hard to get a therapist who gets it really.
yeah,
And I watch cult documentaries to kind of like
right,
work some shit out. But yeah, it's very isolating. It's very isolating. And then you gaslight yourself and then you
right,
get gaslit. And it's
right.
like, uh yeah, that's really hard to work through because then you're just questioning yourself and your experience and then you think you're the crazy one.
Right. It sounds like to me, like listening, because you and I haven't talked. I literally only saw a little blip of something on the social media that I thought maybe I should privately inquire a little bit more. To me, it sounds like a hybrid of like cult and sex trafficking. And I don't mean to like say the sex trafficking word as like, I'm not trying to offend anybody who was sex trafficked. And I don't want to say sex trafficking to you if that's like feels even too intense, but it like, someone who's being sex trafficked isn't usually worshipped, right? They're like maybe treated just well enough to survive, but it's not usually this worship, which is so confusing, right? To be worshipped and put on a pedestal, but not quite. It's elusive, but you had the potential, and like that kind of stuff. Like it's very, very psychologically exhausting, I
Yeah.
imagine.
Yeah, because I literally was put on a pedestal for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Like this religion had a name, it had rituals, it had
Mm-hmm.
a Bible,
Mm,
I mean, it had everything, right? It just centered around me and my genitalia, quite frankly.
mm-hmm.
And so it's really very confusing because it's like, yes, I'm built up, but then also made to feel so small and so
Right.
terrible. And so, like, I'm doing all this work to try to figure out how I can make myself feel better, get a little breathing room. Like, oh, maybe if I say yes to this thing that I don't really want to say yes to, but maybe I can, and it's just
Mm-hmm.
like you just start making all these deals with yourself and um yeah, it's not consent. Like
Yeah.
I said, when I started this journey about intimacy coordination, it led me down all sorts of different paths about
Mm-hmm.
consent and boundaries and somatics and like it just opened up my world and really shone a light on what was happening in my world and what made me uncomfortable. And really, the straw was I found my voice. I
Mm-hmm.
found it. I said no,
Mm-hmm.
like no. And that was the end.
Mm.
That night was I said, no, I'm not giving that to you. And that was it, you know? And then it became an exercise in me choosing myself.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted so bad to take back that no
Yeah.
because I didn't want to hurt them.
Right.
But I knew my body felt so good. It's like my body woke up
Right.
and was like, thank you.
Right.
Thank you so
Right.
much for saying no.
But the people pleasing was still like, but I should not because
Yeah. I
they
mean, I was
might.
terrified. I was terrified. I mean, I thought that I wouldn't have a career if I wasn't with this person. I thought that like there's no way I could do any of this stuff without them. That's not true.
Right.
And I don't know that that was said to me explicitly, but it's what I believed, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So like the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves,
Right.
just been rewriting all of my narratives, the past 2 years, but
That is also, though, a very common marker of people in abusive relationships. And I just want to also highlight that abusive relationship doesn't have to mean a sexual, like romantic relationship. It can just be any type of relationship, someone you know. So there's usually an underlying threat, right? And it's not necessarily that someone every day is saying, if you don't do this, I'm going to do that. It is this threat of like, I do all these like there is a way of making someone helpless in a situation under the guise of help or care or whatever, but it is slowly making that person very dependent on you. And then also in addition to that, there is an underlying, I could take this away and you would be at a loss. I could take this away and you wouldn't know what you're doing. Nobody loves you as much as I do. Nobody cares for you as much as I do. Like these are, it doesn't have to be said this exact way, but
yeah.
there is this type of thing. And I guess my next question is like, if you would feel comfortable talking a little bit about what the punishment was if you didn't do these, like if because it's a little bit like you were the Wizard of Oz, but that curtain got pulled back and it was like, oh, it's this other thing. It's not what we thought,
Hmm.
right? So it's like you were that giant statue of the powerful Oz, right? And then like pull back that curtain. Who's that? What's going on back there, right?
Yeah.
Because most cults, the cult leader is the cult leader. The one that is in the photos is the one running the show. It's not usually a figurehead per se. Well, I have a little joke. I say religions are cults with more time, like because Jesus
Yeah.
is in all the photos, but like he's clearly not running the show anymore. Like it's all these other dudes in robes, but like cults that are still like actively culting, like that have their cult leaders that are alive right now, like they're the ones, right? There's no person behind. So you're like that's an interesting like situation right there, right off the bat. So what was the can you get do you feel comfortable giving an example of what the punishment was if you didn't do a video where you felt uncomfortable doing or whatever?
Yeah. So there was a lot of like pouting
Ah,
and I hated it. I hated
right,
it so much and I would just do almost anything just to make it stop because I
right.
just hated it. But there was also fights, like
Mm,
big, big fights. Really cinematic, I will say. Like just, it could happen anywhere. It could be in the middle of the street. It could be, there was one time like we were in a different country and this like standing under this street lamp, like fighting. And then this cute little woman came by and she's like, just be happy.
mm,
you know so it's just like it was just the fighting was so intense and it was kind of like a Jekyll Hyde situation, and the thing is too is like no one would ever suspect
right,
that because this person was so like mm, didn't have a super big energy,
right.
you know
didn't seem
Out.
super aggressive or forceful or
Yeah,
the
like,
things
oh, it
that
was
you
like this
think.
gentle feminist, right? So like everything was also wrapped up in like feminists, like feminism and like, the worship of women and me in particular. And it's like, I feel like a lot of people think like, oh, I mean, I did. I thought this, like, oh, they just love me too much. And
Mm,
it's like, like people think like, oh, your partner should worship you. It's like, no, no.
yeah.
No. I mean, I have like things in writing that are just uh, not okay. Like
Mhm.
it's not okay. And just it's too much pressure. It's way too much pressure. But yeah, like the fights, and I was taught pretty early on because I came from a household that fought.
Mhm.
Like there was violence. We fought. Yes, it was an evangelical household, but it was full of hypocrisy. I mean, not surprising, right?
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, like, so I just didn't want to fight. Like, my whole goal was just, I don't want to fight. Like, I grew up with this. I don't
Right.
want this.
Right.
But I was taught pretty early on in the relationship that to fight was a virtue because it
Mm,
meant that you cared.
right.
And so if we were fighting, it would just be like, oh, well, this is just a sign of a healthy relationship. But it's not.
No, and I agree with you on that. And the two relationships, one for sure that I've had in my life that was absolutely abusive. The other one that I think was definitely borderline or about to be, but I got out of it quicker. Both of those, there was a lot of vitriolic fighting. That the same thing. It's like this whole thing, like, oh, that's just how passionate you are for each other and how much it means, and nothing could be further from the truth. And I also grew up in a very like chaotic, rageful household, and I don't like that either, and I didn't want that, the fact that I found that as an adult or as a teenager and then as an adult is not surprising. But the fact that I wanted peace and I have strived for that is definitely there. I think a lot of women in particular, I don't know about men, but I think a lot of women in particular can very much relate to your experience of not giving someone what they want and that person pouting or whining or causing fights or doing to until they get what they want. And I think most women have at least one sexual encounter where they have said yes when they wanted to say no or did say no many times, but felt pressured in if I just do this, they will shut up and they will leave me alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's like they just wear you down to this little nub, and you're just like, I don't even care anymore. I
right.
don't even care anymore. Whatever you say, whatever. Fine. Yep. I agree. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like,
And just so everyone's clear, that is not consent.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that is not consent. Like if the two men that listen to this podcast, because I feel like it's predominantly women and maybe gay men that listen to this podcast. If you're listening, because I do feel like that's often the dynamic. I mean, it could be anyone's dynamic, but I'm saying I'm going to go ahead and assume this dynamic. If you have to ask more than once and you have to whittle someone down to get what you want, that is not consent.
Mhm.
It's just not.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of women relate to that on a deep level. I know I do
Yeah.
for sure.
I
Um,
would say that no means no, but yes doesn't always mean yes.
right.
There's a lot of other factors that come into that yes,
Mm-hmm.
Is it
Mm-hmm.
truly a yes? Like, what is the body language? What is the tone? Like,
Right. Right.
are you really more of like a maybe? Like, you're curious,
Right.
like, do you feel safe? That's
Mm-hmm.
the number one thing. Like, do you feel safe to be in choice?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't feel safe, you can't make consensual agreements. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you can't give consent. And I find that that is, you know, when I look back, like, yes, I probably said yes or instigated something because I knew if I did something, then that would show that I was trying. And it's like, it came off as placating, but
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, I kind of was. Like, I was just trying to, like,
Survive.
quiet. Yeah,
Survive.
like I
You're
just
trying to survive.
needed like some peace, So it's like
Hmm.
if I overworked, if I overproved, then I could have some peace. I could have some safety, but like it wasn't safe.
I was talking to Roderick, the producer, about one of my episode that opens the season, about one of the parts of it where I talk a little bit about kind of in my head not saying yes, but relinquishing because I knew I didn't have a choice. So it felt like I had a choice if I relinquished. And I don't know if that makes sense to a lot of people. Like, it's like if you know that you are not going to win the fight,
Yeah. Hmm.
you're not saying necessarily yes, but you're saying, fine, go ahead. And that feels better than staying in the no.
Yeah.
Because it's like if you stay in the no, you know that what is being taken from you is being taken from you. But sometimes if you self oppress, if you kind of put yourself in the seat of doing it first, or it's kind of like I have to actually do this trick with myself on airplanes because sometimes I can get really anxious on airplanes and like freak out. Um, I have to say I'm not like I trust that the pilot is driving the plane. That helps me. But in these situations, like with certain abusive moments, I have gone to like, I'm not saying yes. It's really hard to describe. I feel like you kind of understand what I'm talking about, where it's like, or a lot of people will objectify themselves so that they aren't objectified,
Yeah.
or they do it as a way to kind of self-preserve so it doesn't happen to them. They're making it happen already, so it feels like a choice, like I'm in control, because you're not. Like when you're being taken advantage of, manipulated, whatever, you're not in control and you're seeking it, right? You want it desperately, autonomy and control. And so I hear that like a bit in what you're saying, or at least that's how I'm relating to it, is in my own moments where it's not necessarily like I was like, yes, go ahead, but I was like, I'm not going to say no because it's giving me more autonomy in this moment because I know that I don't actually have a choice.
Yeah, it's just too exhausting.
Yeah.
Like I just don't have the fight or the energy in me. And, as you're talking, I'm thinking about the amount of times that I did fight back. I
Mm-hmm.
did.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely did. But eventually, like whatever I was fighting against, it would take me back to growing up with my parents, and they would yell and scream and whatever, and I would fight back, of course. But eventually I would just be like, uh-huh,
Mm-hmm.
mm-hmm,
Mm-hmm.
uh-huh.
The
Like
self-silence,
checked out,
self-silence.
don't
Yeah.
even care, and like the language was very important uh in my relationship. And if I said something that didn't use the correct words, like I would get a grammar lesson, you know, and like, and I'd just be like, you know what I mean, and then it just became about like sentence structure and the correct vocabulary and just like, huh? But like the amount of times that I would say no or fought back, like, and they became like, yeah, I guess, okay,
Right.
all right, I could be fine with it, and just like making that choice. And something that I did want to talk about, and maybe we're going there, but I felt an intense need to protect him.
Mm.
And I find it interesting that we find a need to protect our abuser.
100%.
And
Yes.
I think, I don't know if that's more me protecting myself because I felt ashamed or embarrassed about what was going on. I think probably both are true, but yeah, even now, like doing the podcast and
Mm-hmm.
thinking about doing the podcast, I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, what am I going to say? How am I going
Right.
to say it? You
Right.
know?
How do I protect this person even in this moment?
Yeah. And I don't know that I am. I feel good like in what I'm talking about
Hmm.
and how I'm talking about it because I just don't want it to turn into like a gossip session,
Right.
you know?
No, 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 no. And this is the
Yeah.
thing. Like at the beginning of this podcast, I make a very specific note. And that note is that this is told through the lens of our own experiences. And whatever your feelings you have, whatever feelings is roused in the listener, that's for them to deal with. That's for them to have to figure out. That we're not endorsing anything. We are simply telling our own experience. We're not taking inventory of other people. This is simply our own experience. And the fact of the matter is, no one is ever going to be able to argue that you didn't have this experience that you had because it is yours.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. But there is, I think you touch on something that's a really, really important aspect of various types of abuse, and that is protecting the person who's abusing you. And I think it's definitely more common than not common. I'm just like scrolling all of the times that I have been in a situation that I felt like was abusive. And unfortunately, I have a tendency to like find these situations. And because I'm very loyal and empathetic,
Mm,
these people are attracted to me and I stay in
yes.
them for very long and I make excuses and um, so this is like, I'm just like in my head thinking, and always I am protecting them. Always I'm saying this isn't who they really are. Always I'm saying, but they have this other side, right? So that is very, very common, I think. And I think it's a hallmark of a lot of it. Um,
Yeah, like the ability to see their side and to have that compassion and empathy for them keeps us in the situation longer,
mhm,
right? And I had a instance a few months ago, like not a romantic relationship, just a relationship, a friendship, and I didn't like how I was being treated.
mhm,
I didn't like how I was being talked to, and I spoke up. I finally was like, I'm done. Like you're done doing this to me. I can't do this anymore. And of course there's repercussions to that.
mhm,
But I think, I think being afraid of those repercussions keeps us silent.
mhm,
But you have to get to a point where you're like, whatever repercussion happens is worth me standing up for myself and
yeah,
being my own advocate because staying in a situation that isn't healthy
mhm,
because you just don't want to hurt their feelings,
mhm,
like it's your feelings. You have to live with that every day.
yeah,
They don't give a shit. They don't even know what's going on.
right,
They don't care what you're going through. But like the amount of times that we sacrifice our own happiness and well being
mhm,
for our perceived happiness and well being of other people,
mhm,
it's just too much. It's like, do you want to have this moment of discomfort with like a little confrontation for, this small of a time? Or do you personally want to experience prolonged discomfort because you're in this situation? Does that make
right,
sense?
right, right. It's like a very small trade off for a better result than this like long, like this slow burn, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really important. Um, is there anything specifically as you're unpacking and processing that has helped you? And is there anything right off the bat that like hasn't helped at all that you're like, this was terrible, did not help. This has been very helpful.
Yeah. Um, really paying attention to the stories that I tell myself has been
Mm.
really important and kind of like where are those stories coming from? Like where is that narrative coming from? Like,
Can you give an example? And it doesn't have to be an exact story you tell yourself, but just give an
yeah.
example.
It'll be like, this is a simple example. And like, I'm terrible at technology. I can't do video. I can't do editing. I can't do graphics. I can't do that. Yeah, but I can.
Mm,
Turns out that I can. And
hmm.
it's like, I just told myself that story for a really long time,
Hmm.
believed that my capabilities did not extend to that. Like, this is a really surface level example. Like, of course, there's other examples, but
Right,
like,
right.
you know, yeah, I can do that. Am I the best at it? No, but I'm doing it. And I'm not letting this idea of perfectionism stop me from trying. You know, I feel like as long as I'm trying, as long as I'm failing forward, which is like my new exciting phrase.
I love it. Failing forward. I like to say I set the bar so low I can step over it.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's like taking away the expectation and just allowing myself to rough draft. I like to say that I'm living my life in rough draft and I'm making edits as I go along. And I'm allowing myself to red pen things that aren't working for me. And I didn't spend a lot of time in regret. I don't really regret the situation. I'm sad about the situation, really sad about it. I'm sad for that girl. I'm sad for that version of myself. Um, and the thing that really, really helped me, which was really hard to do, is that I prioritized my healing over being productive.
Mm,
I think a lot of times in these situations where we're hurt so deeply that we just pour ourselves into work and just use it as a distraction. And so I was really mindful about like, okay, because once things broke, like my creative juices were just all over the place. And I was like, I want to do that and that, have that idea, da, 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 da. And I was like, just sit down.
mm-hmm,
Sit down, feel the feelings, feel them all. They're I wanted to say that they're ugly, but they're not. They're
mm-hmm,
fucking beautiful. Like the ugly crying is not ugly. Like it's gorgeous. Like do it, get it out, feel the feelings, process the things you need to process, and have people around you that believe you.
mm-hmm,
That is super important and that will support you and will take your crying phone calls, you
mm-hmm,
know? Um, I tried for a while to keep people in my life that were friends with both of us. That did not work.
mm,
It didn't work. There was too much like of an energetic connection. And, I'm going to get witchy, but you got to cut those cords.
mm-hmm,
And you got to sometimes cut and recut and recut. And sometimes I can actually feel it like reattaching. And I have to be like, no, not today.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not today. Um, And the only way to do that is to get quiet, get still, right? Back to that slow burn burlesque. It's all related. Like you can't feel, you can't notice unless you are quiet and still. And I fully understand that that is a terrifying place to be because you don't know what's there.
Mm-hmm,
But I feel like the stuff that's in the dark, the stuff that's in the shadows, the darkness can't survive when you shine a light on it. So shine the light, look at it in the face. What is it telling you? What lesson do you need to learn? And it doesn't mean like you learn a lesson and you're done.
mm,
You're going to have to keep relearning it. It'll come in different forms. Like my situation I just had, my point from being frustrated with how this person was treating me to the point where I said something was shorter.
mm-hmm.
So that's good.
Right. The progress, right?
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. There's always, you don't like just win the game, there's like always a next level of healing and dealing with. And as your life changes, your boundaries change, your situations change. It's like you download an app, but there's always the new and improved, the upgrade, right? You have to do the upgrades or the app doesn't work anymore. It's like the new terms, always the new terms. But that's kind of like how it is.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to do, I mean, before I got on this podcast, I had to update Chrome. Like, so,
Right?
like sometimes you got to do the software update.
Yes.
Yeah.
Over and over again.
Yeah.
I've noticed that for myself too. And I, you'd think that I would by now be like, oh, yeah, this is just part of it. It's always like a forever process. But for some reason, I'm always pissed off that I have to redo something again. Like, for some reason, I just, if I have to learn something new, I'm pissed off. If I have to redo my boundaries, I'm pissed off. Like, I just, for some reason, I don't come to new experiences with a happy and light heart and
You
like
don't
a
come with your
bewilderment.
you don't come with your beginner's mind,
I
Jillian.
know I do not. I come with a very old, like, generations of like just crotchety, old, immobile, like inflexible cigarette, like angry.
Okay, well, we're gonna work on that.
I need to work on that. I need to work on that. I absolutely do.
But the thing is, like, you know that about yourself.
Yeah,
Like you know that. So you know that like that's something that you're noticing. And the way
yeah,
that you notice that you got quiet, you got reflective. Like you
yeah,
know that you know this about yourself. Whether you want to really change it or not, or just be like, yeah, that's who I am.
yeah.
That's
I
also fine.
I love that you spoke about settling, taking your time. First of all, this is something I always really appreciate you as a burlesque artist and performer is because I really enjoy people who can simply stand on stage and hold an audience. There is a certain type of accomplishment in artistry to do that because they say in dance one of the hardest things to do is stand still. And
Yeah.
it is true. The amount of energy it takes for you to be compelling and not do something, and the feeling that you have to do something to keep everybody interested, right? There's an acting phrase that says if you want to be interesting, be interested, right? Be interested in what you're
Mm.
doing and you will be interesting, right? But if you're not interested in anything, you're not going to be interesting. But you are the epitome of that. When I watch you perform, you are interesting because you're interested in whatever you're doing, saying, having, prop, not, look, whatever. All of that is true. It's something I very much value. And it becomes more valuable as you get older because my young baby burlesque people and dancers, you will not always be able to slam your body around like that. And when you can't slam your body around like that anymore and you can't do your big cool trick that gets all the clapping and the applause and the accreditation and all that stuff, will you still be interesting or are you a one trick pony? And maybe you're only doing this for like a blip on the radio and whatever, but some of us are lifelong artists and we got to figure it out. So that I learned as I became an older artist, but also I had a pretty devastating knee injury. And that kicked off a ton of healing where I had to just sit and heal. And
Yeah.
I've done, written works and these, short film, about this whole thing. But that from when that happened and the healing that I had to sit down and take place to when that artistry was created was years later. Like, yes, it's as you're going through it, it can spark a lot of like artistic juices and creativity. But like you said, there is a time to process and you don't have to do anything. Look, but if you want to get through it, you have to go through it. You can't go around it. There's no shortcut. And through it sucks.
Oh, it sucks so hard.
It's
It
terrible.
sucks so hard. It really does. I mean, I'm still going through it. Of
Yeah.
course, I'm still going through it. But I think it's like the most brave, courageous thing to do is to feel your emotions and to
Hmm.
give them space and to communicate them.
Hmm.
Be real about them. Uh, the masking and the pushing down in the name of being a productive human is really dangerous.
Hmm. Yeah.
And it was a really hard decision for me to just prioritize my healing and not just dive into work. Like it was really scary because I'm like, what if I miss out on this? And what if I do that? And da, 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 all the stories we tell ourselves.
Yeah.
Um, I had to be like, no, this is where I am right now. This is where I need to be. I need to look at this. I need to cry myself to sleep. Whatever I need to
Hmm.
do, I need to do it. But that leads me to a place where I can talk to you and I can hopefully help other people
Hmm.
because it is so, so isolating.
Hmm.
Um, and I feel like my story is somewhat relatable, but it's also very weird and
I
and unique, and and I've struggled with that too, like
Mhm.
because it is just bizarre.
And I think it sounds more bizarre to you than it does. Like I'm hearing it for the first time and I'm like, oh, yeah, that's like this. Oh, yeah, that's like that. Oh, this. So to me, it's like completely, yes, you qualify. Here's your seat at the table. Here's your chair at the table, right? You
Yeah.
you represent these areas of this thing, you know? It's a little interesting. It's packaged in a new way, but it is these things. And I think that's so important. You and I talked a little bit before we got on about the ambiguity of how much I want to highlight the ambiguity of abuse. How it's not always the after school special version of what abuse is. It's not always the PSA version. It's not what it's not always a black eye and a violent rape. It's not
Exactly.
always a I've been sex trafficked in this particular way. It's not always physical. It's not always something you can see. It's coercion is very tricky. There's so much depth and ambiguity to this, and I love you speaking about all of that today. I have like a little, and plus the way you are, I think is also so specifically powerful because of how in charge of your body you are. I think it's the whole point of Gray Maybe is that nothing is black and white and that
Mm-mm.
nothing is yes or no. That
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of gray and there's a lot of maybe. And that someone like you who is perceived as completely in control of her body, very empowered, that yes, and also there could be some undersides to that weren't, and that it's not a failure to you. That doesn't make you not powerful. It doesn't make you not in charge of your body. That doesn't make you any less of whatever you are as an entity, but that it's that pervasive,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
abuse is that pervasive, that it could affect someone like you.
Yeah.
So that if it can affect someone like you, then we all have to kind of open our eyes a little bit, self reflect. Have we had these situations? Have we done these situations to someone else? And what does that look like?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There's been a lot of, accountability on my end too for just how I've been in my career and how I started to where I am now, and maybe how I've treated people. And I mean, we could talk about that if you want. But I wanted to make a note on the ambiguity of things. Is I really, really struggled with calling this abuse
Mm,
for a long time. It Because I didn't want to be a victim.
mm-hmm.
I couldn't. It made me feel so terrible. Like I victim blamed. I
Right?
did
Like you're
that.
weak. Like you're
Yeah.
weak. Yeah.
How could I do that? You know, And then my mom is saying, how could you let, I didn't tell her everything that had
Mm-hmm.
happened, but then she's like, why did you stay? And I just looked at her and I'm like, why did you stay? I'm like,
Oh,
do you
yeah.
think this
Yeah.
is helpful? Like, it's not
Yeah.
helpful, you
Yeah.
know? Um, yeah.
I had a similar experience when I was 16 and I was like crying in my bedroom about my abusive boyfriend. My parents did not know he was abusive. My parents did not like him, but she didn't know, and she came in. I must have like been so loud I woke her up, and she came in and she was like, "Are you crying about so and so?" Like, and I'm just like, "Get out of my room," like just like that. And she's like, "Don't ever be with a man who makes you cry. Don't
Oh,
ever don't." And I looked at her and I couldn't say anything because I was like, you don't get it. And now as an adult, I can look back as a third party in that room and say, the first man who made me cry was dad. What are
mm,
you talking about?
yeah,
I don't know how to be in any other situation,
yeah,
right? I would
yeah,
love to not be with a man who makes me cry.
yeah,
It's like, duh. Like, but in the moment, you're just like, it was a gaslight. She wasn't trying to gaslight me.
sure.
What she said was true, right? But it's a victim blaming situation. It's a gaslight. That was, like your mom, bless her heart, wants to know why a strong woman like you stuck around. And that's like gaslighting someone who's like, no shit. Like,
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I'm aware, but I'm also like, I stuck around because I didn't have a family that was supportive.
Yeah.
Because my family kicked me out for 5 years. So
I
I
was
had no one to talk
primed.
to.
I
Yeah.
was primed for this type of a situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and I told her that too. I'm like, I don't know, because I had no one. Like I had no family for a long time. Do you remember that part of our relationship? No?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But I don't know. Every day is still a challenge. I still have flashbacks and memories like multiple times a day.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it's like doing the work that I need to do to take care of myself mentally and to keep me grounded is
Hmm.
really essential.
Hmm.
And
So,
that's like journaling,
yes.
meditating,
Yes.
dancing,
Right. The
reading.
self-care, all the
Yeah.
self-care, all the self-care, and allowing yourself to go through this journey and express it and let it kind of come through you.
Yeah. And burn shit. Just fucking
Oh,
burn shit.
yes. Some of that too.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it. I like it. Um, I especially like that.
Yeah.
So I have a I'm gonna wrap this up in a bow because this has been really, really good. I have like so many notes. I have so many
Oh,
little things that I love talking to you about. We're gonna make sure people can find you for intimacy coordinating and all of your lovely ventures, your uh slow burn class, all the things, all of those things. But I have a tradition on the podcast. At the end of every episode, I ask my guests. I don't say we give advice on the podcast, but I do say we offer suggestion. Do you have any suggestion for someone who might be suffering right now? You kind of have given a lot of good suggestions, but if there's one that just stands out, what would that be?
choose you.
Ooh,
Yep. At every turn, choose you. What does that look like? What does that feel like? And just keep making that choice. When you feel like you want to back out and choose someone else, choose you. And do it, start it in small ways and then see what it feels like for the big ways.
what great advice because it's so simple, right? But it's not easy.
It's not easy.
Simple and easy are two different things. It's
It's not
simple.
easy.
That's a simple guidance. Choose yourself. Easy, but
Oh,
try it. Yeah.
so hard. So hard. And I will say, um, yes means nothing if no is not an option.
Yes means nothing if no is not. Okay. So yes means nothing. Yes doesn't mean anything if no is not an option.
Yeah.
That's a really, really strong statement. You've made a lot of strong statements. I could make like 10 t-shirts based on Michelle Lamore language, like just like
Let's do
quotes.
it.
So yes means nothing if no is not an option, right? That is not consent.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, just when you think about it, like I have a friend who is very good at this, and I know that when she says yes, she means it
Mhm.
because she's said no to me before. She's had boundaries, and I'm like, cool, thank you. Thank you for saying no. Like, I appreciate that.
Mhm.
And so her yes means so much more to me now
Mhm.
because I know it's real.
That's a good point. Yeah. Michelle Lamore, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you,
Thank
thank you
you.
for bearing your soul today, burlesquing your soul to us and
Yes,
me. I
yes.
really, really appreciate it. I can't wait for the community to embrace you because I know they will. And I just think that, you and I are on a little similar trajectories in the sense of that I say often that I feel like I spent the first 40 years of my life um, not speaking and I want to spend the next 40 years speaking. And
Yes.
like and it's not necessarily I didn't have a voice, but I didn't use my voice for my artistry so much. And now going forward, I only want to use my voice as part of my artistry. And so
Yes. Healing that witch's wound.
girl, we were dancing naked in the forest together.
That's right.
Just burned at the stake. But I think a lot of women relate to that because there's still modern day witchery that's happening. We see that all the time. But I can't thank you enough for taking your precious time, spending it with me and the pod. And I can't wait for everybody to embrace you as this goes out. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jillian. I want to speak to intention versus impact. I spent a lot of time considering, did this person mean to do what they did? Did they know what they were doing? And I spent so much time thinking about their feelings and their experience and how I can better understand them that I forgot to center myself in my own experience and my own story. And that really came to light when I was journaling one day and I caught myself. I kept talking about him and I thought, oh my God, like even in my own private time, I'm unable to center myself in my own story and my own experience. And, I think we think that if somebody didn't mean to do something, that it hurts less. And it doesn't. Whether it's intentional or not, the impact is still felt. And that's something that I really had to come to terms with. So while I would like to think that a lot of this was not intentional, the impact was felt deeply.
Although I've gotten to know Michelle in the dressing rooms we've shared, I would never have anticipated she was in an unhealthy situation and enduring such psychological trauma. Michelle is smart. If you don't know her personally, you don't actually know how smart she is, how she speaks, her taste in artistry and her art, how she views herself in her works and the world. It's a very strong reminder that amazing, smart, strong people can be victims of abuse. Full stop. I feel so fortunate to know her and that she's decided to share her journey with me and here on Gray Maybe. Her resilience is inspiring, and knowing her experiences only amplifies her dazzle, smarts, and strength. I can't wait to see what she creates next in her life and art. If you're listening to this episode and you have or are currently experiencing abuse, I'm sorry and welcome. I hope this helps your journey. You're not alone. Just a reminder for anyone who needs to hear it. The definition of abuse is when someone causes us harm or distress. It can take many forms, ranging from disrespect to causing someone physical or mental pain. It can occur in someone's home, a care home, a hospital, or a public place. Often, the people who commit abuse are taking advantage of a special relationship. The legal definition of abuse is as follows. The term abuse means the knowing infliction of physical or psychological harm, or the knowing deprivation of goods or services that are necessary to meet essential needs, or to avoid physical or psychological harm. You don't need to have been punched in the face or sexually assaulted to experience abuse. Know that whatever you are feeling, there are those among us that have probably felt it too. You are not alone. If you're listening and you have someone you love in your life that is enduring abuse, you are also welcome. You are also not alone. It's hard to watch someone be hurt and feel powerless to help them. I've included various links in the show notes for help and support. If you made it this far, thank you so much for listening, and I hope you were able to find something relatable in today's episode. If you'd like to show your support for this podcast, consider donating on Spotify or rate, share, comment, and subscribe. As I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, this is also a social experiment to see if in telling my stories, I can embolden listeners to share their stories. If you'd like to share a story on this topic, anonymous or otherwise, on the podcast, please email greymaybestories@gmail.com. GREYMAYBESTORIES@gmail.com. Thank you to everyone who helped make this Grey Maybe podcast happen. Producer and editor Roderick Barge. Cover photo by Jose Perez. Music licensed by Pixabay. Special counsel Jada Ellingham and Roderick Barge. Special shout out to supporters Patty Olgan and Jeremy McCullen. Until next time, bye for now.